She was abandoned at the altar, humiliated in front of everyone, but she didn't shatter. Instead, she disappeared. Genevieve Thorne transformed into Lillian Carter, a woman shaped by betrayal and rebuilt with strength. Years later, she returns, not seeking love but revenge, to dismantle the empire of the man who deserted her, Declan Sterling. As secrets unfold and feelings clash, she confronts a harsh reality. Is revenge worth losing herself? Where are you watching from? Comment below. If you enjoy stories about betrayal, redemption, and power, subscribe now. Your next obsession starts here. Genevieve Thorne stood at the far end of the grand ballroom in Los Angeles, surrounded by tall white roses. Her fingers shook as they clutched the delicate lace of her gown. The air was heavy with the aroma of champagne and fresh flowers, but all she could hear was the loud thudding of her heart. The chandeliers above cast a golden glow over the marble floor, creating an almost dreamlike atmosphere. This was meant to be the happiest day of her life, the day she would become Genevieve Sterling, the wife of one of the most powerful men in California. But something was amiss. Across the room, Declan Sterling stood tall in his tailored tuxedo, radiating his usual commanding presence. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and his sharp blue eyes, once a source of comfort for her, now held something inscrutable. His phone buzzed in his hand, a persistent sound breaking through the soft conversations of the guests. Fighting her nerves, Genevieve took a tentative step forward. "Declan," she called softly, her voice barely audible. He didn't respond. Instead, he glanced down at his phone screen, his jaw tightening as if bracing for something. The elite gathering of business leaders, celebrities, and high-profile guests felt the sudden tension. Conversations faded, whispers spread through the rows of gilded chairs, and even the string quartet in the corner paused briefly before continuing their melody. Genevieve's parents, seated in the front row, exchanged worried looks. They understood how ruthless high society could be, how secrets, rivalries, and unexpected revelations could ruin a person's life in an instant. Then, the phone rang again. The sharp tone shattered the silence, causing Genevieve to flinch. Declan hesitated too long before he finally answered. The moment he lifted the phone to his ear, his entire demeanor shifted. His broad shoulders tensed, and his grip on the device tightened. Genevieve couldn't hear the voice on the other end, but she sensed urgency. A woman's voice, sharp and frantic. The color drained from Declan's face. "Declan," she called again, her voice trembling. He ignored her, barely acknowledging her presence in front of everyone. Instead, he whispered into the phone, his words too quiet for anyone else to hear. Then whatever was said next caused him to pull back slightly, his whole body going rigid. In an instant, his grip released her hand. The loss of his warmth sent chills down her spine. "Declan," she urged, her heart racing, panic rising in her throat like poison. "Who is it?" For a fleeting moment, she believed he might explain. Look her in the eye and clarify that this wasn't what it seemed, that she wouldn't be humiliated in front of so many people. Instead, he exhaled slowly and stepped away. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, just loud enough for her to hear. Then, without another word or even a glance back, Declan Sterling turned on his expensive dress shoes and walked away. The grand doors at the ballroom's entrance swung open, and like that, he was gone. A heavy silence filled the room. For what felt like an eternity, Genevieve stood frozen. Her body wouldn't move. It was as if she had shut down, unable to comprehend what had just happened. She was at the altar, in her wedding gown, surrounded by hundreds, and the man she loved had just walked out. A muffled sound, part gasp, part sob, escaped her. Whispers began almost immediately. "He just left. Did she do something? There must be another woman. What a disaster. Cameras snapped as the press, especially invited by the Sterling family, recorded every painful moment of her disgrace. Her father rose abruptly, his face drained of color, while her mother clutched her lips in shock. Genevieve's vision blurred. Her breath came too fast. She heard the wedding planner rushing toward her, whispering about how to manage the situation, but nothing made sense anymore. Then she spotted Constance Thorne, seated in the second row, her face showing a glimmer of satisfaction. Genevieve's heart raced as the pieces clicked into place, the icy glares, the carefully spread rumors, the way Constance had always eyed her, not with warmth, but with hidden contempt. This wasn't simply a runaway groom. This was betrayal. As the walls of the ballroom seemed to close in on her, she silently promised herself, one day, Declan Sterling would regret this. The next morning, Genevieve woke up to a nightmare that had only become worse. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Calls, messages, social media alerts. She didn't need to check to know what they said. The wedding, meant to mark the start of her new life, had transformed into California's biggest scandal. The tabloids were unforgiving. "Runaway groom Declan Sterling, abandoned bride at the altar," screamed one sensational headline. Another one cut deeper. "Gold digger exposed, the real reason Declan left Genevieve." Her stomach churned as she read through the articles filled with wild accusations. Some claimed she had been unfaithful, that Declan discovered the truth just before the ceremony. Others labeled her a social climber, someone who had schemed to infiltrate the Sterling family only to be tossed aside. There were even rumors she had staged the whole thing for attention. Her hands trembled as she swiped through images attached to the articles. Pictures of her standing alone at the altar, looking devastated. A shot of her parents grasping each other's hands, torn between rage and heartbreak. A final haunting image of Declan walking away, tension in his posture, his face inscrutable. Humiliation coursed through her veins. Her phone buzzed again. A call from Tiffany Bell, a so-called friend from the high society circles she had reluctantly navigated during her time with Declan. Genevieve hesitated before picking up, pressing the cold device to her ear. "Genevieve!" Tiffany exclaimed, her voice a mix of pity and intrigue. "Oh, wow, I don't even know how to react." "Then don't," Genevieve replied, her throat tight. "I mean, it's just shocking. Are you okay?" Genevieve shut her eyes tightly. She could practically hear the delight in Tiffany's voice, likely sitting in a trendy Los Angeles cafe, sipping on an overpriced drink while relishing her downfall. "I need to go," Genevieve said, cutting off the call. Turning off her phone wouldn't stop the chaos swirling around her, but at least she wouldn't have to hear it unfold. Thoughts of calling Declan flashed through her mind, demanding answers, forcing him to face her. But all she could picture was him walking away, the cold finality in his voice when he said, "I'm sorry." He clearly wasn't sorry. He hadn't looked back. The suffocating pain was one thing, but worse was the anger bubbling inside her. Just when she started to process her feelings, a knock echoed at her apartment door. Genevieve tensed, dread coiling within her. Her father stood there, jaw clenched, eyes darkened with fury. "You need to see this," he said, stepping inside without waiting for a response. He placed his phone on the table and pressed play on a video, a statement from the Sterling family. Constance Thorne appeared, poised in front of an elegant backdrop, her face a perfect mix of disappointment and smugness. "As a mother, my only wish has always been the best for my son," Margaret began, her voice carefully controlled. "But recent events have confirmed our fears about his relationship with Genevieve Carter. We never liked the match. Although Alexandria's choice was tough, he ultimately did the right thing." Genevieve's heart sank as Margaret continued, subtly placing all the blame on her, implying she never belonged in their circle, that Declan made a serious error in trusting her. The worst moment came next. When asked if Declan had left Genevieve for someone else, Margaret paused, a faint smile creeping onto her face. "I believe Alexandria's actions tell the story," she replied. Genevieve felt sick. The implication was obvious. Yes, there was another woman, and Genevieve had been discarded. Tears threatened, but she held them back. "This is their game," her father muttered, pacing the cramped living room. "They protect their own by ruining anyone who doesn't fit their perfect image." Genevieve knew he was right. The Harringtons weren't merely letting Declan walk away, they were erasing her, making sure she was just a footnote in their lives. Her career crumbled just as fast as her personal life. The next day, her boss summoned her into his office. The tension was unbearable as he slid a resignation letter across the desk. "Genevieve," he said, his voice laced with reluctance, "you have talent, but we can't risk bad publicity." She had made a name for herself in marketing and had worked tirelessly, but none of that mattered now. She wasn't just Genevieve Carter anymore. She was the woman Declan Sterling had abandoned at the altar. She left the office with nothing. No fiancé, no career, and no dignity. To add insult to injury, the paparazzi found her. She barely reached her apartment in San Francisco before cameras flashed in her face, reporters shouting, demanding answers. Her hands shook as she struggled with the lock, but before she could slam the door shut, one leered, "Got any comments on Declan's new girl?" Genevieve slammed the door and sank to the floor, her breath hitching, hands balling into fists. For hours, she remained there, crushed under the weight of her despair. Then, as darkness fell outside and the echoes of her humiliation seeped deep into her bones, a shift occurred inside her. She had mourned enough for the life she lost. It was time to stop. Genevieve refused to be erased. She wouldn't be just another footnote in their narrative. Someday, Declan Sterling and his world would pay for betraying her. And when that day came, they would be the ones left in ruins, not her. The Genevieve Carter everyone knew disappeared that night. By morning, she made a choice. She wouldn't wait in California for the gossip to die down. The city had turned against her, destroying her reputation, leaving her in shambles. No one would come to her aid, not her so-called friends, not her colleagues, certainly not Declan Sterling. So she erased her former self. She packed a suitcase, left her engagement ring on the nightstand, and walked away from it all. Within days, she canceled her apartment lease, sold off what little she owned, and withdrew every last cent from her accounts. She deleted all social media, changed her phone number, and severed ties with anyone from her past. By the time the press realized she was gone, Genevieve Carter had become a phantom. She flowed from city to city, evading anything that reminded her of her old life, a cramped motel in Miami, a rundown apartment in Atlanta, and a windowless room in a shared place in New Orleans. She accepted any job available, waitressing at a shabby diner, cleaning offices overnight, stocking shelves at a convenience store. The work was exhausting, and the pay barely enough to get by. But she didn't care. She wasn't trying to live, she was trying to survive. Night after night, exhaustion wrapped around her like a heavy coat, yet sleep evaded her. The betrayal haunted her. The image of Declan Sterling walking away, the media tearing her apart, Margaret Thorne's smug smile replaying in her mind, igniting a slow-burning fire in her chest. Revenge was no longer just a thought. It had become a vow. But to achieve it, she needed power, something she had never really had. Wealth, influence, and a world of her own. So, Genevieve Carter was gone, and Lillian Carter emerged. She began anew, rebuilding her life from scratch with the little money she had left. She enrolled in a short business course, staying up late to study financial strategies, absorbing knowledge like a person starved for information about the markets, branding, and high-stakes finance. By day, she worked as a waitress. By night, buried under books and spreadsheets, jotting down plans in the margins of napkins. Every tip she earned funded textbooks and online courses, anything that could help her navigate the elite world that had cast her aside. The turning point came when she met Arthur Blackwood, an experienced investor in Seattle. He was quiet, with sharp eyes, a seasoned veteran who noticed something in Lillian that others missed, a fierce hunger. One evening, as she cleared the last dinner plates at the elegant restaurant where she worked, he called her over. "You ask too many questions for a waitress," he noted, sipping his whiskey. She didn't apologize. She'd been listening to his discussions with clients for weeks, absorbing every bit of financial wisdom. "I learn quickly," she replied. Arthur scrutinized her for a moment before handing her his card. "If you're serious about this, meet me tomorrow morning at my office, 9 sharp. Lillian couldn't sleep that night. By morning, she stood outside Arthur's office in San Francisco, wearing a borrowed blazer and equipped only with a notebook and fierce determination. Arthur challenged her, throwing tough problems her way, testing her resilience. But she didn't falter. She pushed herself harder than ever, proving her worth day in and day out. When Arthur finally offered her the role of assistant, she knew this was her chance. With his mentorship, she gained valuable experience, made connections, and learned to navigate boardrooms instead of ballrooms. And rather than splurging her first paycheck on designer items, she chose to invest. Starting small, she purchased a micro-loft in a growing neighborhood, flipped it for profit, and continued to build on that success. One property after another, she constructed her empire. In just 2 years, Lillian Carter wasn't just getting by, she was thriving. By the time she returned to Los Angeles, she had transformed into a formidable presence. Her comeback wasn't loud. There were no bright lights or grand announcements. She blended into the city like a shadow, barely noticeable. But behind the scenes, she was already preparing her strategy. Through meticulous investments, she began to acquire stakes in Harrington Global, cleverly hiding her ownership under a veil of shell companies and silent partners. Every move was purposeful, every decision calculated. She studied Harrington Global from the inside, pinpointing its weaknesses and vulnerabilities. When the moment was right, she arranged a private meeting with none other than Declan Sterling himself. Standing before the towering glass structure that displayed his family's name in Los Angeles, she felt no fear or hesitation, just resolve. She was there for one reason only: to take him down. Lillian Carter stepped into the bright lobby of Harrington Global, her heels clicking on the polished marble floor. The atmosphere buzzed with quiet strength, the scent of wealth and ambition infused in the walls. A younger version of her might have felt overwhelmed, might have hesitated to enter this realm again. But not today. Today, she was no longer Olivia Bennett, the woman Declan Sterling had once walked away from. She was Lillian Carter, CEO of Carter Company, a powerful player in real estate and private equity. The receptionist greeted her with polite indifference, unaware of the history that linked them. "Carter," the woman said, checking the appointment log. "Mr. Harrington will see you now." Lillian offered a calculated smile and followed her through frosted glass doors leading to Declan's office. She understood what she was stepping into. For 2 years, she had closely monitored his empire, tracking every move. She knew the numbers. She understood which parts of Harrington Global were thriving and which were suffering due to bad strategies. Most importantly, she knew Declan would not recognize her. Not yet. As she entered his office, the sight of him after all those years sent an unexpected shiver through her. He looked similar yet different. The sharp suit, neatly styled dark hair, and the confident stance were all familiar. However, an unsettling tension lingered in his posture, a hint of weariness beneath his polished exterior. Good. She wanted him to feel vulnerable. "Alex," he said, rising from his desk and extending his hand. "Ms. Carter," he welcomed smoothly, his voice rich and familiar. "It's wonderful to meet you." Lillian gripped his hand firmly, her perfectly manicured nails contrasting with her unreadable expression. "The pleasure is mine," she responded. She scrutinized him as they settled opposite each other, no hint of recognition in his sharp blue eyes. Perfect. "I hear Carter Company has been making significant strides in real estate," Alex remarked, leaning back in his chair. "Your aggressive acquisition strategy has gained attention." Lillian tilted her head, pretending to be amused. "Is your comment meant to imply you're impressed, Mr. Harrington?" A slight smirk appeared on his lips. "I'm not easily impressed." Lillian leaned in slightly. "Neither am I." For a moment their eyes locked as they faced off silently. She sensed an undercurrent of intrigue from him, much like it had been when they first met. But this time, she held the power. "I'll be straightforward," Alex said, watching her with care. "Harrington Global is seeking new partnerships, and I believe Carter Company might add value to our network. Your luxury property investments are commendable." Lillian crossed her legs, thoughtful. "Partnerships rely on trust, Mr. Harrington, and trust can be complicated." A flicker crossed his face. Was it unease? But Declan seldom showed uncertainty. "I believe trust is established through results," he replied. "And yet," she countered smoothly, "one wrong move can collapse it all." For a fleeting moment, something shifted in his expression, a stiffening of his jaw, a flash of buried feelings. Did he sense that odd familiarity, that ghost of the past? She watched as his fingers tapped lightly, his gaze drifting for a moment, as if trying to remember something just out of reach. But then it disappeared. "Well," he regained his composure, "let's see if we can build that trust." Lillian smiled, her resolve unwavering. "Let's." They explored the details of a potential investment deal, but Lillian wasn't fully focused. She observed, calculated, and learned his flaws. She flawlessly portrayed a savvy, ambitious businesswoman, exactly what he expected. But deep inside, she was already setting the stage for his downfall. Lillian played her role perfectly, presenting herself as the clever and ambitious businesswoman Alex desired, someone he could trust. But beneath that facade, she was secretly crafting his downfall. By the time she exited his office, the first stage of her plan was moving forward. She walked through the busy streets of Los Angeles, her mind buzzing with strategies and the next moves in her game. She had once again infiltrated his world, but this time, she wouldn't be the one facing ruin. The game had begun. Lillian Carter stepped out of Harrington Global with confidence, but inside, she was busy calculating her next steps. Declan Sterling had no clue about her true identity, and that was exactly how she wanted it. For now. In the following weeks, she seamlessly integrated herself into his life. She attended the same industry events, participated in private investment meetings, and made sure to be seen as an essential asset. She was neither pushy nor easily impressed. Instead, she was strategic, revealing just enough to keep his interest while never allowing him to feel in control. And Alex was intrigued. He began to seek her out, not just at meetings, but at social events, too. It was never overly obvious, but she noticed the way his eyes would find her in a crowded room, the way his gaze lingered just a moment longer than necessary. It was working. And yet, something unexpected occurred. She had certainly expected Alex to be drawn to her. That was predictable. Men like him often did want what they couldn't completely comprehend. But she hadn't anticipated the way he looked at her, as if she were someone he recognized, trying to recall a lost memory. The first instance happened during a private investors' dinner, where the air was loaded with the scent of fine wine and rich cologne, and the chatter blended with the sound of clinking glasses in an elegant San Francisco ballroom. Lillian had been deep in conversation with a venture capitalist when she felt it. His gaze. She glanced over, catching Alex's eyes from across the room. For a split second, his expression shifted, uncertainty and confusion, as if he were trying to connect a memory that felt misplaced. Lillian's heart raced. She slightly tilted her head, allowing a subtle, knowing smile to appear on her lips before she turned away. Let him puzzle over it. Let him doubt. A week later, the second encounter occurred during a strategy meeting in a sleek Seattle high-rise. Lillian sat across from Alex and a couple of executives as they discussed real estate deals. The meeting was focused until Alex casually asked her something. "So, Ms. Carter," he said, leaning back in his chair, his fingers tapping the polished surface of the conference table. "Where did your career begin?" Lillian realized this question was a test. She met his gaze confidently. "Oh, nothing special," she replied smoothly, sharing just enough truth to keep her story believable. "I studied business and spent some time in Chicago building my experience." His lips curved slightly, yet there was calculation in his eyes. "You seem familiar," he said after a moment, "as if we've crossed paths before." The atmosphere shifted, charged with an unspoken tension. Lillian didn't blink. A small, amused smile formed on her lips, tilting her head enough to provoke his curiosity. "Maybe in another life," she whispered, her tone soft and intentionally mysterious. Alex chuckled lightly, shaking his head as if to brush off the idea. Yet she could see it, the flicker of doubt, the hint of unease. This was a risky game she was playing, but that made it all the more thrilling. The real moment of confirmation came on a crisp autumn night at a charity gala in San Francisco. She arrived in an elegant floor-length white gown, not identical to her wedding dress from before, but close enough to evoke memories for the right people. The response was immediate. She sensed it as soon as she entered the ballroom, the shift in energy, the way heads turned, the quiet gasps from those who remembered her. And then there was Alex, engaged in conversation with a senator when he caught sight of her. His words hesitated, his